All right, welcome back to another episode of the Niche Gamecast. And today I'm joined once again by Josh, Games of War. And we're going to be doing an episode reminiscing and talking about our memories for one of our all-time favorite PlayStation 3 games, and that's Eye of Judgment. So, Josh, you and I have been talking about this game for quite a long time. It comes up at our conversations here and there where, we talk about our memories playing this game. It's an early PS3 title. Why don't you go ahead and kind of explain to everybody what made this game so unique, and what was it about Eye of Judgment that made it stand out from your typical PS3 game?
Yeah, Eye of Judgment was at its core a multiplayer focused card, almost like a strategy card game of sorts, where you have a mat that you set on the floor, and it's a big pack. First of all, it comes in a big special edition pack that comes with a mat and a stand, and it comes with the PlayStation Eye that uses the camera to actually see the cards and scan the cards. And after the PlayStation Eye scans the cards actually come to life on your TV screen and do battle. And it's just a very unique experience, and it's very competitive, and it's very creative. The monsters were great, the designs were great, and it's basically just a good game to play with a friend. You could play it online originally. Remember, Pete, it's been taken down now?
Servers have been taken down a few years ago, actually, and it was pretty sad. Even though I wasn't playing Eye of Judgment, I had so many memories playing this game online that when the servers were taken down, it was basically the end of Eye of Judgment, because it's not really fun to play against the computer. The point of this game was to play online, and I was part of a pretty big Eye of Judgment community. There were a lot of websites out there for people that played the game to discuss strategy, and when the new expansions would come out, just making different decks. And correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't decks in this game only 20 cards or something like that, or 30 cards? I remember making decks, and they weren't that large from what I remember. So deck strategy was a little bit limited because deck size was so. But yeah, you can still play the game now, but it's going to be against the computers, and it's not the same. And also, when Josh mentioned where you can use the camera and everything like that, it wasn't just putting the card there and having it just activate and screen. You'd be able to move the card around on this mat, and the monster would move with it. So the animated monster was attached to the card. So it was this really cool gimmicky effect. It was super gimmicky, but there was something very different about it at the time. I'd never seen anything like this. I think this was maybe the first of its kind. I haven't looked into the history of Eye of Judgment to see if there were any other games like this that sort of mimicked this gimmick with monsters popping out of these cards on the camera. But in terms of console games, maybe something on the computer, but in terms of home consoles, I think this was the first game to ever do something like this.
Yeah, very creative for the time. And when we're talking about with the mat, this was the mat that you'd put down on your floor. And
yeah.
It was broken up into a grid, and then you would place your cards inside of these squared grids on the map. And I know, Pete, we talked about this before. It was very finicky with the amount of light that it required. So if you were going to play this game and you wanted to really enjoy it, and in order for this camera right here to pick up the card, you had to have a massive amount of light. So a lot of times you'd be huddled around this game with 4 lamps plugged in all around us.
He's not kidding. Yeah, I did the same thing. Because here's the thing, do you have a card handy that you can show real fast?
Yeah.
On the top of the card and on the bottom, you'll see it's this archaic kind of rune-looking black bar up top there. Okay, and then it has the green triangles. That's what it would use to detect the orientation of the card and what card it was. Because you can turn these cards to turn the direction of the monster, which was really cool, and the direction it'd be able to attack in. But the problem was, if you had poor lighting, so let's say it's your turn and you can run out of time, you put this card down and it starts to read it and then it stops. Starts to read it and then it stops, and it's your turn's running out and you're come on, I need to attack. And it can screw you over sometimes where the game thinks you took the card away but you didn't. It's still in play, so they just it really screwed up sometimes. And especially you can imagine how aggravating that got when you were playing. Said you had to have lamps on, you had to have the windows open, and if you were like me and you had some of the more rare cards, because they were graded by rarity, different colors on the cards, little symbols would tell you how rare a card was. So if you had really expensive cards, and some of these cards when Eye of Judgment was in its prime were 50, 60, $70+ cards for the most rare ones, I kept them in card sleeves, typical trading cards. So using a card sleeve, when you'd put it down, it would reflect light, so you'd get reflections, and that would screw up, because if you just have a little reflection on one part of that card that's used to detect what it is, that screws it up. It screws up the camera. So you have to take it out of the sleeve, play it, and then when you're done with it, put it back in the sleeve. It got to be a bit mundane. Like, it got to be a little bit nerve-wracking after a while. But I don't know, did you use card sleeves for some of your more rare cards?
Yeah, I did. And that's another aspect of the game where, yeah, it was addicting to play the game because it was a lot of fun and it was something new and something fresh. And it was unlike anything I'd played before. But, the collector in me, the collector in Pete, and getting into a whole new world of card collecting. I mean, these cards were, it was addicting to go to the store and to get these packs and crack it open and skim through the cards and look for those rare cards and the ultra rare phantom cards that were very, scarcely placed into random decks. And it was just, that was a whole nother experience in itself. It was collecting these cards and getting the different monsters. And I was a really big fan of like the artwork on the cards
I was disappointed that the artwork wasn't larger, because they had so much like camera stuff on there that they needed for the camera, that
yeah.
the artwork itself was like not even half the card. You think of most trading card games, the artwork at least takes up half of the card, whereas I had Judgment, it's like not even half. I'd say it's maybe like 35% of the card.
Yeah, that's all you get right there is a small little square, and the rest of it is all. Well, there's also detailed inscriptions down below the characters, and those are kind of like your turn effects. Like, for instance, this monster, the Leapfrog Bandit, is destroyed on a non-wood field tile.
Oh,
So
I forgot all
basically,
about the tile
yeah,
elements. Oh
the
my god.
tiles. See, when you look at the map, it's broken
Oh,
up into these squares,
yeah, yeah.
and in each tile is when you place the card down, it becomes this card's element. So there's like wood elements, and there is fire elements and water. And these creatures are obviously, some are weaker and stronger against others. And if you have a wood creature down on a tile, it can make it more vulnerable or less vulnerable to other effects, and those statuses can change and flip-flop depending on which square is occupied by which card. So, I mean, if you are a fan of strategy and really thinking, I mean, this was a thinking game. This was a
There was a
thinking
lot of
man's
strategy.
game.
Yeah, and each
Lots
card,
of-
like, they have little symbols. And if you guys look at, like, the bottom of this video all the way down in that corner, you can kind of see, like, that card in the front. There's squares that will tell you the direction that a certain card will attack. So in that case, I think that card that I'm showing as an example down there can attack like forward, behind it, and to its sides. Some cards can attack like 2 rows in front of it. Like there's all these different attack patterns. So it's not just like attack and defense stats when you go and attack. Like there's all these different directions they can attack in. It was a pretty complex and strategic game. Like there was a lot going on. And, just getting back to the element of how addicting these cards were to buy, I remember when this game came out, I felt like I was like the only person in my entire area that was playing, because finding packs for this game, like stores weren't getting a lot in terms of packs. So in order to play this game, you needed physical cards. You had to go to the store and you had to buy packs of cards to play this game. So I'd go to like GameStops or EB Games and I'd clean them out. They'd get maybe like a booster box in, something like this. And then that would have like what? How many packs come in here? I don't even know. Well, let's just say 30 packs or so. But most stores would only get in individual packs that had their own card backings. And, I'd go there and I'd wipe out everything they have. In some cases, they'd only let you buy a certain limit because, some people would come in, they'd have like a few regular customers and like they didn't want one person buying up everything. So
Yeah.
I just remember going to Target one time and they had like the little metal peg hooks, and they had a whole row of Eye Judgment cards, and by a whole row I mean probably like 10 packs. I grabbed the entire stack of packs, and I remember I had to walk from one end of the store to the other, and I just thinking to myself like, man, they must be thinking I'm about to steal these things, because I just took an entire rack of cards off the shelf and I'm now walking through the store with these things. But no, I definitely bought and paid for them. But you had to go through a lot of lengths and to get these cards. So it got to the point where I was going on eBay and buying these booster boxes. And, I sold off a lot of my cards when I knew Eye Judgment was going downhill and it was not going to be online for much longer, and sold a lot of my expensive cards that I could still get money for. But I used to buy these booster boxes. So this is for Series 2 of Eye Judgment, where they came out with more cards. And then this is Series 1. But I didn't buy just 2 booster boxes. I probably bought like 5 of these things. And these were like $100 plus, $120 each. But man, it was so much fun opening these things up. And I still saved, if you look in here, I still saved the wrap. And man, it was like Christmas morning every time I'd get one of these booster boxes and going through it, getting the rare cards. And did you ever amass? You never got a complete collection, obviously because of the Phantom cards. But did you ever get a complete collection of non-Phantom cards?
Yeah, we did have a complete collection. I mean, we've still got like just stacks upon stacks. And one of the cool things too was not just like going for the monsters. There were also like status effects cards to where you would take a card and hold it underneath the camera and scan it in, and then you'd place that desired spell or effect on top of.
That.
Yeah, you'd place it on top of one of the creatures, and it would give you whether it's like immunity or a special attack. And there were all different types of like status effects cards that were enhancing to the monsters, and it was just added another layer of strategy and enjoyment to the game.
Now, I don't know if you ever went to the dark side of Eye Judgment, and by that I mean people must be wondering. So, can't you just like make a copy of these cards and use that?
You could do printouts, and then the eye wouldn't know.
Because it's not like it's reading like a super unique code. It's just looking at the printed image. Like it's just reading that black barcode and the green triangles. So you could make a printout, and if you got the color just right, sometimes it was a little finicky if you didn't make a good color printout because it wouldn't detect it properly. But I remember sometimes when you'd make a deck, I would be missing like that one rare card. I remember there was this one card I needed. It was like a water elemental, like fish turtle thing or something that I needed for one of my water themed decks, and it was like a $20-$30 card. And I'm like, I just can't get this thing in a pack, and I printed it out. I put it in the sleeve, and they used to give me some problems, and it would suck when the cards would not be detected and you're playing online, but that was the cost of playing with printed out cards. I mean, some people played the game by just printing out all their cards. There was a website where you can just print out every card in existence, but in the way, as a collector, it wasn't that fun. And something that I wanted to mention, like, growing up, I didn't have friends that played card games at all. Like, there was a brief period in my life where I played Magic the Gathering for like 2 months. I got super into it because I had this one friend that was really into it, and they did tournaments like every week at this one card shop place. But that was like for 2 months, and then I got out of it. So this was really my first exposure to being able to go out and see what it felt like to buy cards and really get invested into a card game and not have to leave my house to go to some card shop because I didn't have any locally. It was hard for me to get to them. Just being able to play from my home and play against real people. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but did the microphone work for this game? Were you able to talk to your opponents? I think you were.
Yeah, you were. I think you were. And another thing that made this game special, like you, it was my first card game where I didn't have to venture out because I didn't have friends that were into card games, and I had been into them. And the thing I liked about this game, probably the most in terms of strategy, like we were talking about, was on the bottom of each card, there's also a number that you can see right there. And each time you had a turn, this is where like I'm such a fan of like turn-based strategy RPGs and like strategy RPGs. So each time you would get a turn, you'd get a number of turn points. And you could either choose to use these turn points. Say you got 4 turn points per your turn, and you had 4 points banked up. You could choose to maybe use a card that had a number 2, and that would eat away 2 of your turn points. Or if you wanted to use a card that had more, like this is a more powerful card and it's got a number 4. So this would use up 4 of your turn points. Or you could say, you know what, I've got a monster card that requires 6. You could choose to not move at all and bank those turn points, and then the next turn you could unleash like a more powerful monster. Or you could just have 3 cards go that had maybe a number 1, like a number 1 strength creature, and just use 3 points for 3 individual moves. So there was just so much strategy, and the goal of the game was
I forget, how do you win? What was the win condition? I can't even remember.
The win condition was to have over 5 of your cards on the playing field. Right. Okay. So like you would eventually use your creatures and attacks to kill your opponents, and after your opponent died, they'd have to remove their card off of the playing field. Mm-hmm. And if you got it to where you had 5 cards on the mat, and then you'd win the game. And it was brutal. It was brutal putting that thinking cap on and using the spells and using the effects and statuses and using your cards right and using your creatures right, and the elements. The elements were very important to use that right element in certain times.
Weren't certain games, wouldn't certain games last like 20 or 30 minutes? I don't remember them being fast.
Man, they could last, if you were a skilled player and you were playing against somebody. This is another thing in the game. it was best played against somebody that knew what they were doing. Like if you got against a noob, you could take him out within 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But if you had two skilled players going back and forth, it could last a long time.
And
You know?
one other thing about this game, I just remembered the presentation, the music in this game. I can
Oh,
remember when it would get down to like the wire, and you're like in on the winning turn play, like the music would change into like this heavy metal, like
oh,
super energetic. I'm like, this is so over the top for a card game, but it kind of fit because iJudgment sort of had like this really grungy, like grimy, like art design for their stuff, and it was just really over the top. But I loved it.
yeah, metal music. It was almost like a Lords of Thunder-esque, like a shoot 'em up, just heavy metal, like almost like cheesy 80s metal, like just blasting and like it's kind of a like laid back card game where you're looking at because the backgrounds are pretty nice too, Pete? They were kind of like
Yeah, from what I remember. Yeah.
real fantasy themed. Like you could choose to play at a water palace or you could play at like a volcano, like lava themed level. And this music was just like shredding in the background. It'd get more intense and stuff. It was cool. And I just want to mention real quick, this was always one of my favorite cards. This was the Orobus Dragon, and this monster
Oh yeah,
required
I
he
remember that.
required 7 turn points to use. So only the best players could bank those points and unleash this big bastard. He took a ton of hits to kill, and he would flatten lesser cards in mere a single turn. So I mean, this game, the strategic vision was just limitless, man. It was just a ton of fun, and I miss the game.
I do really miss it. Yeah.
I do. I mean, it's sad that, and Pete, something like this, the way games have changed in such little time since the PS3 early days, a game like this would never be released nowadays. They would never sink this much cost into a game like this in such a niche genre. It just would never happen anymore.
No, not with everything going digital. Like you look at Hearthstone, and now anytime someone's thinking of coming out with a card game, they're going to use Hearthstone as like their example that they have to try and mimic or beat to, you know,
Right.
going out and buying physical cards anymore. Like that almost doesn't exist. Everything is digital. Like you know how much money Hearthstone makes from digital card packs. Not to go off topic here. I mean, this is a video about Eye of Judgment, but let's just say that in the future, we're probably never going to have anything like Eye of Judgment anymore. And before I forget, I do want to say that yes, you can still play Eye of Judgment. You can pick up one of these starter packs on eBay, probably pretty cheap. I don't know what they go for now. You can play. I think you could probably do local multiplayer with a friend if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Getting cards. I'm not sure if the price on Eye of Judgment cards has gone up or down, or if they've. I don't know what the pricing structure is like if you want to get into it, but you can still play it. There's actually a version on the PSP. I know it's out digitally. I know definitely in Europe. I'm not sure about the US, but playing Eye of Judgment on a PSP without the physical cards, it's just not the same. But if you want to get a taste for the strategy, that's a way to think about trying out the game. But I don't know, Josh, unless there's anything else that you want to say about Eye of Judgment. I think that pretty much wraps up our memories on that amazing game.
Yeah, just here's the final look at the stand. This was the stand that would sit over top of the map, and it would house the PlayStation Eye, so the camera was facing down, so it could scan your cards. And just getting this stuff out of the closet and getting it all set up, and getting the mat put down and the lamps out, it just takes me back. And it's not even that long ago, but I have warm, fuzzy feelings getting this little starter set out and setting everything up. It was a great game, and a sign of the times, and I miss it. I still play it, have friends over and play it, but yeah, it was a great game.
It just says something about games that have online these days, and once the servers get taken down, sometimes it really changes the game to the point where it's just not the same anymore. So iJudgment was a perfect example of that. And guys, that's going to do it for our video on reminiscing about the Eye of Judgment. If you've played the game, post some comments below. What did you remember fondly about the Eye of Judgment? And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.